Welcome to the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. I'm Melissa Lieberman, a fellow IC and business coach. On this podcast, I teach you to become a consistently booked independent consultant without becoming a pushy salesperson or working 24/7. If I can do it, you can too. Listen on to find out how. Welcome to episode 243 of the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. This is Melissa Lieberman, and I'm so excited that you're here today because we're going to be talking about bottlenecks. And specifically, there can be many bottlenecks in a consulting business, but today we're going to be talking about resistance as one of the bottlenecks that is likely happening for you in your consulting business, whether you realize it or not, and how that is preventing you from achieving the level of success that you are capable of achieving. So that's what we're here to talk about today. I'm so excited that you're here, and we're going to dive right in. Although, one thing I wanted to say, I'm recording this a few weeks in advance, but on the day that this goes live, it is my birthday. So I'm going to say happy birthday to myself. I am going to be, or will be as of today, 51. Crazy how quickly life goes. 51. So I am owning that and celebrating that, and already feeling a little regretful that I've announced it on this podcast at my age, but also super proud to already, to be here at this age and doing what I love doing more than anything, which is working with and helping independent consultants to be successful. So that's how I like to spend my birthday here with you. Okay, so we're on episode 243. And today I really want to talk about something that I think is really important to acknowledge and also to recognize in a consulting business. And that is a bottlenecks created by resistance. So to quickly go through the agenda for today, we're going to talk about what is this bottleneck of resistance? What is the root cause? What's causing the bottleneck and this resistance? And then 5 ways to overcome the resistance that you may be experiencing or almost assuredly are experiencing in one form or fashion. We'll talk a lot more about what it looks like, this resistance, and the 5 ways to overcome it. And then I'll share with you as we wrap up, as we always do, how to put this episode into action. So that's our agenda for today. I'll also tell you what inspired this episode. I think it's an amazing example, and I can't wait to share it with you. But before we do, I created a new companion resource for you. I love creating these and have quite a collection at this point. You can find them on ictoolkit.com. But today's companion resource is what I'm calling the Consultant's Mindset Audit. It's an audit. You can go to icmindset.com. So the 2 letters IC for independent consultant, icmindset.com. And you'll walk through an assessment or an audit of your mindset to understand where is your current mindset right now. So you've got a good baseline and what your opportunities are to evolve your mindset away from things like employee mindset or consultant mindset. That might seem weird, right? You are a consultant. So what is the problem with having a consultant mindset? Of course, you need a consultant mindset, but you also need a business owner mindset. So it helps you to see where you have areas of opportunity with respect to your mindset. And you can, again, find that at icmindset.com. I'm so excited that I can't believe I haven't created this before now. In fact, I was kind of working on the episode and thinking about what the companion resource it would be. And I realized I've got to create this. It's long overdue. And so I would recommend going and taking that right now. Pause the episode, go take it, and then come back and listen to the rest. Okay, so with that, let's dive into this bottleneck of resistance. So let's just start off with what it means to be a bottleneck. What is the bottleneck, right? Normally, when we think about a bottleneck, especially as a consultant, we think about looking at a process and figuring out what are the points in the process where progress slows or stops. We think about bottlenecks as constraints or inefficiencies, like on a production line, or maybe there's delayed approvals, in an online process or in a piece of software that you're helping your clients to leverage more effectively. Or oftentimes we think of bottlenecks as inability to handle volumes. Like a process can handle a certain volume, but then when it gets bigger, it breaks. When we think about bottlenecks as consultants, we're thinking about these systemic things or there's external things. What I want to suggest to you, though, when we turn the concept of bottleneck to your business, in an independent consulting business, especially, or a small boutique consultancy, the bottleneck is almost always not, almost always not your processes or your strategies. The bottleneck is almost always you. I'll say it a different way. The most common bottleneck in an independent consultant is the way you're thinking. It's you. And so, with that in mind, and I say that not just because I made it up, but I say that because I see this, I've experienced it myself as an independent consultant. And I see this over and over again in the consultants that I work with, whether it's in a private coaching setting or in a lead gen sprint, or even just talking to consultants on consultation calls. Over and over again, the bottleneck comes down to the consultant themselves. And there's so many different ways we get in our own way, how we create our own bottlenecks. And one of them that I want to address today, which is one of the main bottlenecks, is what I will call your relationship with resistance. Your relationship with resistance creates a bottleneck in your business. Your relationship with resistance creates the situation where you've slowed or even stopped progress, where you're not achieving as much as you're capable of achieving. This bottleneck is the relationship that you have with resistance. So we're going to talk about resistance today. Resistance is what's slowing or stopping your process. I'll say that again. What it looks like second guessing. It looks like changing your mind. It looks like overthinking. It looks like perfecting things or delaying or deferring or procrastinating. This is what resistance looks like in your business. And it might feel rational for you. Might feel, we can almost rationalize or justify anything, right? I'm not ready. You might want to pursue a new type of offering, for example. You might want to start moving into advisory. And then all of a sudden you start experiencing resistance. And then the rationalization starts coming into effect, right? Oh, I'm not ready, or this needs more work, or now's not the time. Those kinds of things, those kinds of thought processes that then keep you circling back to what you're already comfortable with, what you're already doing in your business. But these rationalizations are those things, like I just said, the I'm not ready. This needs more work. I need to think about this more. I need to plan it out more. I need to be more clear about it. Now's not the time. All of those things that feel very rational are really symptoms of resistance. They're not the reality. So when we think about the resistance and we start to realize that this resistance is what's keeping us with the status quo, right? The resistance, anytime you come up with a new idea for your business, maybe you want to shift the pricing, or you want to change the type of work that you're doing, or the weighting of the mix of work that you're doing. Maybe you've been doing maybe 10% of advisory and 90% of execution, and you want to flip that. Anytime you want to change something about your business or add something new in your business or shift the way that you're doing work in your business, one of the biggest obstacles you can face is this resistance. It's your brain's way of trying to protect the status quo. Even if really the status quo is not ideal at any level, our brain is designed to keep that status quo in place because it's a known quantity. We understand it. We've experienced it. We know what it looks like. We know how it feels. It's a well-worn path. And so when you start to think about doing something new in your business, the bottleneck to doing something new is usually this kind of resistance, where your brain will start talking you out of it, where you might even physically feel the resistance, or it's more of a mental approach where you're talking yourself out of something or delaying something. And ultimately, to get past this bottleneck, to help you evolve your business to look more like the way you want it to look, got to address the root cause, which is the resistance. And so the question then becomes, well, how do I fix this resistance? And what I want to offer to you today is that we think we need to get rid of the resistance so we can move forward. But honestly, this is a fool's errand because as a business owner, having resistance is part of the process. And quite frankly, if you're not feeling resistant towards something, towards some type of a change, then I would say to you that you're not pushing yourself as far as you're capable of achieving, that you're under setting goals. This came about because I was listening to a podcast. I think it was Andrew Huberman. I hope I said his first name correctly, but it's more of a science of the brain type of a podcast. We can put the link in the show notes. But he had Stephen Pressfield as a guest on his show. And Stephen had just come out with a new book that he just released. But he's the author of War of Art, for example. And his new book is called Turning Pro. So anyway, he was on this podcast that I like to listen to occasionally. And they were talking about resistance. And a lot of Stephen's work has been on the topic of resistance in a lot of different books. And so anyway, the way he described it, I thought was so incredible. He described the resistance as a business owner, especially, or for anyone who's wanting to achieve a certain goal, is imagine that your goal is a tree, like a huge, beautiful tree. And the tree always has a shadow. So when you think about setting your goal and you imagine it as this tree, it's like, I can't wait to accomplish this goal and this beautiful, represented as this beautiful tree. The tree also always has a shadow. You can't have a tree without a shadow, without the sun. Obviously, that creates a shadow. The tree always has a shadow that goes along with it, depending on the time of day, of course. The shadow is the resistance. It always comes along with the goal, with the tree in this case. So rather than having the idea that you need to get rid of the resistance to accomplish your goals, again, think about resistance as the second guessing, just that feeling of resistant, but also the second guessing and the perfecting and the overthinking, all of these things. The idea that you need to get rid of resistance in order to achieve your goal is actually not the right target here. Because the resistance will always be there because you've set goals that are new, that are not something you've accomplished before. So the resistance by definition will come with it because it's something new and out of your comfort zone. And your brain is trained to keep you in your comfort zone, within the known, everything that's known. And because we're setting goals and wanting to achieve things in a different way of living than most people live when you're running your own business, a different way of doing your work, a different way of generating income for yourself, setting different income goals than you may have ever achieved before. All of that is new. So of course, resistance will come with it, just like the shadow is with the tree. And so I want to share with you today, rather than going after the idea of quote unquote fixing the resistance, what you can do instead. What it first, though, relies on before we talk about the way to tackle it is to talk about where it comes from. Where does this resistance come from? And how does it turn into a bottleneck for you in your business? Or even you could think about it even as a ceiling in your business. Let's talk about the root cause first. We've talked a little bit about it in the sense that your brain is designed to keep you from doing new things, keep you with the familiar. But what I want to say to you is that this resistance doesn't, for so many of us, we think the resistance just appears, right? That it just happens to us. Like it just comes along one day, like knocks on your door and asks if it could come inside. That's how so many of us think about the resistance. I'm curious for you, ask yourself, how do you think about the resistance? How do you know that it's there? Sometimes it's incredibly obvious. And other times it's very subtle. I know for me, and I've been in business for almost 14 years now, I can recall many, many times feeling resistant. Like I'm not going to do this new thing and really trying to justify keeping what I've been doing because it's working. Those kinds of feelings of resistance. But I can tell you, I can remember very vividly a time where I physically felt like gravity was pulling me, even like somehow gravity doubled in its strength and would literally pull me down onto a chair in my living room to keep me from coming into my office to do the thing that I had decided I wanted to do. I honestly don't remember what that thing was at this point, but I can remember that intense feeling of resistance. So you may be feeling a resistance like that, that's actually physically resistant, where gravity is stronger than what it normally is, or where you just feel physically pulled away from what it is that you're trying to accomplish. Or the resistance might feel more mental for you, where you're just spinning with this second guessing or overthinking or perfectionism, or constantly trying to get things ready before you go forward. Whichever it is, or both maybe, we want to be thinking about the root cause of this. Again, that it doesn't just appear. That feeling of like extra gravity for me didn't just happen to me. It came from somewhere. Where does it come from? Where it comes from is the way you're thinking. The resistance comes from the way you're thinking, either consciously or subconsciously. And if we're going to simplify this, I would say it boils down to two ways of thinking, or two themes, two thinking themes. The first theme is where you don't think you can have what you want. You start thinking about a new way of running your business, for example, where it's easier to create leads, or where you're generating 50K per month, or where you're doing mostly advisory work, or where you're working only 20 hours a week and still making the same amount, if not more. And the resistance will come from you not thinking you can have what you want. The other category of this resistance and the way we think about it that creates the resistance is where you're worried that what will happen if you get what you want. Like we think, oh, I would love to have these 50K months. And you start really, getting into the headspace of knowing that you can have what you want. And then your brain starts saying, well, oh no, if you get this 50K months, you're not going to be able to sustain it. If you get these 50K months, you'll get them, but you won't be able to have them over and over again. So it'll be kind of a flash in the pan. And then you'll feel bad because you can't, sustain it. Or you'll create these 50K months, but it'll make your life so much more complicated that it won't be worth it. Those are the types of thought patterns. But either you don't think you can have what you want, or you're worried if you get it, what it will mean. Those are the types of categories, if you will, of thinking that creates this resistance. You don't just set a goal of create 50K per month, and then all of a sudden you start feeling resistant or that extra gravity. There's a step in between those two things, which is the way you're thinking that then creates the resistance. And it's really important to know the root cause so that then we can start tackling it. And so that's what I want to share with you now, which are what I'll call 5 methods of tackling this resistance so that the resistance doesn't become a bottleneck for you, so that you're not sabotaging yourself and you're unleashing yourself to create the goals that you want to be creating. So I'm going to go through these 5 ways of managing the resistance so that you're less of a bottleneck in your business. Notice I said less of a bottleneck in your business. I personally don't think you can ever not be a bottleneck because your business is what you're running. And because of that, we're the bottleneck. We can reduce it for sure. We can't turn you into a robot. If we could turn you into a robot, then maybe you could eliminate that bottleneck entirely. But because you're a human being, the bottleneck will always be there. We just want to figure out how do we lessen the bottleneck, especially the one that's created through resistance. I'm going to walk you through these 5 ways to manage the resistance that you might be feeling, like physically, as I just described, or mentally, so that this is less of a bottleneck for you. And so you can unleash yourself to accomplish any kind of goal that you want to be setting for yourself. So the first step of addressing this resistance is number 1, to be aware of it. We might get to this point in the episode and you're saying to yourself, well, I don't really feel this resistance Melissa's talking about. If you're that person, I would say to you that number 1, it would be incredibly uncommon that you wouldn't feel some form of resistance as a business owner because you're working on accomplishing things as a business owner that you've never accomplished before. So of course, resistance would be a natural part of that, kind of like the shadow to the tree, because your brain is not familiar for you. So your brain would automatically introduce resistance to try to talk you out of it. So number 1, if you're saying to yourself right now, I'm not resonating with this resistance, I want to challenge you to say, you might not be looking for it. It's there. And if it's not there, then that's a sign for you to say, I should set bigger goals. Because if you're not feeling any form of resistance, physically, like I described, or mentally, the symptoms of the mental side are self doubt, second guessing, overthinking, being a perfectionist, then I would set bigger goals so that you can start feeling those things. Okay. So that's what I would say. If you're someone who's saying, I don't know about this resistance, those are my answers to you. Either one, you're feeling it and you're not even realizing it, or number two, your goals aren't big enough. So if we can go on that premise that everyone has resistance that they're managing as a business owner, then you want to be thinking about this first step of managing it so you're not a bottleneck, which is noticing how the resistance is coming into play. I can notice it in two ways. Number one, that intense gravity, which is not a very common way of experiencing it, but I have experienced it in the past. At one time in particular really stands out. Sometimes it just feels like almost like a physical pulling away from a goal or the ability to move forward. And other times it's more mental. I'll describe it as like your brain throwing a tantrum. I want to do this thing, this goal. Let's just say you want to raise your prices, and then your brain just throws a tantrum about why, oh, now's a terrible time to raise your prices. And you're going to lose your clients if you raise your prices. And you should just be grateful for what you have. And all of those things that our brain throws a tantrum around is forms of resistance. A client of mine described it as a heavy backpack, like feeling this really heavy backpack on, where they're having to climb this mountain, and it's almost like a backpack with a bunch of weights in it. So for you, notice where resistance is coming into play for yourself in your business, because noticing it is half the battle, right? If you don't even realize this is happening, then you have no way of starting to address it and unravel it. So that's why this step is so important, is noticing where it's coming into play. And I will tell you, it gets more subtle over time. It gets more sneaky over time. Might be really obvious when you're first starting out as a business owner. And then over time, your brain starts realizing that you can notice it and overcome it. And so it starts getting more subtle or sneaky to keep you from moving ahead and doing new things. So be aware of that it starts to become something that you can almost have to become a detective in a way to notice where this is happening. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, this might sound really strange, but I'm going to say this, which is celebrate it. Because you're feeling resistance, this is not a problem. In fact, it's actually a really good thing, because number one, it shows you that you are setting goals that are beyond your current comfort zone, right? It shows you that as a business owner, you're not here just to protect the status quo or to recreate a job for yourself. You're here to build a business and to create something that's financially rewarding, that's fulfilling, that challenges you, that gives you the ability to have flexibility. So if you're experiencing resistance against any of the goals that you've set or all of them, that's a great sign. So celebrate it, because that means that you're pushing yourself toward achieving more than you thought you were capable of or you gave yourself credit for. The other reason why this is something to celebrate is because the more resistance you can feel and keep going anyway, the more it creates new ways of thinking in your brain and more neural pathways, newer neural pathways, connections in your brain, stronger neural pathways, and ultimately becomes your new norm, your default way of thinking. And then you can keep going. So it doesn't always feel like you're stretching. Think about this. You probably started off with a certain pricing that you've increased over time. It's not like you're constantly battling with yourself to offer or propose your new pricing. It became your new norm at some point, right? So that's why this is to be celebrated, that you're feeling resistance. And then it's a great thing to have, because it shows you that, I'll call it a dual opportunity. It shows you that you are setting goals that are pushing you past your comfort zone, and that you're starting to build new neural pathways for yourself that then creates a new and improved default thinking way of thinking that is aligned to the goals that you're setting for yourself. So ultimately, this becomes your new norm. And you just keep doing this over and over again. So that's the second step in this 5 steps to turn the resistance into something that's positive for yourself and not a bottleneck in your business. Okay, the third method of turning resistance into an asset for your business is for you to use it as data. Resistance can be a signal. As soon as you can start really realizing the resistance, whether it's that physical feeling of having resistance, like the heavy backpack or the extra gravity, or the mental side of this, where you're noticing resistance, where you start to realize, oh, wait, I'm overthinking this. I'm overcomplicating this. I'm second guessing this. If you start treating that resistance as a signal, it will help you to more easily uncover where your growth areas are so you can tackle them. So, to a few ways to put this into action for yourself are asking yourself, what is the resistance that you're feeling trying to show you? Use it as data. What is the resistance trying to protect you from? What would be happening if the resistance wasn't there? What would change for you? And is this truly a problem to solve or a feeling to move through? These are the types of questions you could be asking yourself to turn this resistance into an asset for yourself and your business. And a way to move through the bottleneck is to use this resistance as data for yourself. The fourth one is you can remove the resistance. So I said earlier that to fix the resistance, you don't want to be focused on removing it, but you certainly can reduce it. And by the other examples I gave you, you can see that you don't have to remove it in order to be successful. But certainly it could be an option for you to remove it. So I don't want to take that off the table entirely. Let me give you an example. You can either eliminate or reduce the feeling of resistance by reframing the way you're thinking. The example, let's say that you had a goal to create 500K next year, and you start feeling resistance about that goal already when you write it down on a piece of paper. You want to ask yourself, what am I thinking that's creating that resistance? It might be something like it feels out of reach. The thought process about the 500K goal is that it feels out of reach. And so you feel resistant. And if you stay in that mental model, then you will most likely not pursue the goal. You'll change the goal to something that does feel within reach, and you let the resistance win versus removing the resistance, or at least reducing the resistance, comes from shifting the way that you're thinking. Rather than thinking just by default or letting your brain come up with the first thing that it throws at you and believing that for that 500K goal, you might shift it into something like, it's possible I can figure out how to generate 50K months. Notice how that lightens it up, right? Versus going off of your initial instinct, which is it feels out of reach, to redirecting to it's possible I can figure out how to generate 50K months, which then shifts your emotional state from resistant to curious and unlocks your ability to experiment and trial and error and evaluate and not look at things as pass fail, but an evolution, and ultimately leads you to testing and trialing and pursuing the goal and ultimately hitting those 50K months. So, this fourth way of addressing the resistance so it doesn't become a bottleneck for you is to leverage the awareness and start to remove the resistance to the goal or to the thing you're trying to accomplish by redirecting the way that you're thinking about it. That will ultimately help you to eliminate the resistance for that particular thing and replace it with an emotion that is more conducive to you pursuing the goal or the change or the shift that you're wanting to accomplish. And then finally, the fifth one, the fifth approach for you to address the resistance so it doesn't turn into a bottleneck for you in your business is to take action with the resistance. So we just talked about how to reduce the resistance, and sometimes that's incredibly effective, and other times it's not. Like for that example I gave you, where I was feeling that literal extra pull from the earth to keep me away from pursuing the goal that I had set. I could lessen a little bit with my mindset, but it really took me mostly to realize that the resistance wasn't a problem. That feeling that resistance, whether it's the physical resistance or the mental resistance or both, it doesn't have to be a problem. It only becomes a problem if you allow it to win. But if you realize, you know what, this resistance doesn't have to go away before I can take action, or realize that even if I take action with this resistance, it doesn't mean that it has to dilute the action that I'm taking, then you can keep going forward. It's almost like it's just a friend, or that heavy backpack, like I was describing to you, can be on your back and you can keep going anyway. It doesn't have to be a problem. So, with that in mind, this fifth way of addressing the resistance by going forward with it anyway, taking action with the resistance as part of your process, is that you decide that you're going to take this action. The action, for example, the 50K months, or the shift in your pricing, or the shift in the type of work that you're doing, or the goal that you've set that you want to work 25 hours a week and still make the same amount of money or more. Those kinds of actions. You decide you're going to do those. You notice the resistance. You acknowledge it. Oh, I see it's there. I know why it's there because of the ways I'm thinking. And you keep going anyway. You don't let it stop you. You think about that tree that we were talking about and the shadow that comes with the tree, that this is actually a good thing, that we celebrate that it's here with us and we keep going anyway. And that's what you want to be doing as that fifth technique of approaching the resistance in your business so that it doesn't become a bottleneck. So as we're wrapping up today's episode, I want to encourage you to put this episode into action. And the best way to put this into action is, number one, to go take that mindset audit that I offered to you. It's at icmindset.com. It will help you to uncover the resistance that you're experiencing and the next steps of where you can prioritize working on your mindset to help better align it to you and setting you up to achieve your goals. So go take that mindset audit again at IC, the two letters IC for independent consultant, mindset.com. And then next, I'll encourage you to implement what I'll call a resistance plan for yourself. And that involves implementing these 5 areas that we talked about today. To remind you, the 5 areas are, number 1, being aware of it. Have a practice of really noticing the resistance, because like I said to you, the resistance gets more elegant over time. The resistance can feel more subtle over time, but it's there. So you want to have a practice of becoming aware of it. You want to celebrate it. You want to use it as data. You want to work to remove it as much as you can, and also be able to take action with it and not need to remove it as a precursor or a prerequisite to moving forward. So implement that resistance plan for yourself. And then finally, I recommend having a daily practice, a mindset practice. And one of the tools I've created for you to have a daily mindset practice is the 100-Day Business Brain Journal. So we'll put the link in the show notes. You can go grab that on Amazon. It's called the Business Brain Journal, and that will help you to put these mindset practices into action as well. So with that, I recommend go taking that audit if you haven't done so already, implementing your resistance plan, getting started on your 100-Day Business Brain Journal, and I'll see you again next week. Take care.
Thanks for joining me this week on the Grow Your Independent Consulting Business podcast. If you liked today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. First, click subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to make sure you don't miss future episodes. Next, leave me a review in your podcast app so other independent consultants can find and benefit too. And finally, to put the ideas from today's episode into action, head over to melissalieberman.com for the show notes and more resources to help you grow your consulting practice from your first few projects into a full-fledged business. See you next week.